Welcome back to the explainer. So, have you ever just stared at a confusing classroom assignment and thought, what on earth am I actually supposed to do here? Yeah, we've all been there. Well, today we're fixing that by tackling something absolutely foundational: mastering educational literacy. Think about it for a second. When an architect sets out to build a sturdy house, they don't just start throwing bricks on the ground and hoping for the best, right? They start with a highly specific, intentional blueprint. And in this explainer, we're going to treat classroom communication in the exact same way, like an architectural blueprint. By understanding the underlying design of how we speak and write to students, we can literally build a learning environment where confusion drops to zero and clarity rules.
Okay, let's dive right into this and look at exactly what we're going to build together today. First up, the 4 communication pillars. Next, the classroom communication matrix. Then we'll look at the architecture of paragraphs. And finally, we'll wrap things up with the practitioner's blueprint. All right, kicking things off with section 1, the 4 communication pillars. Now, as an architect, before you can build a house, you absolutely need to understand your raw materials. And here they are. These 4 pillars, notices, instructions, descriptions, and reflections, are the foundational building blocks of practically all classroom texts. Every single time you communicate with your students or ask them to communicate back, you're likely relying on one of these 4 pillars. Let's break down the specific engineering behind each one. First up, the notice. You can think of this as your urgent messenger. Its entire job is to give clear, immediate information. Things like announcements and alerts. And what's really fascinating here is the specific equation that makes a perfect notice. It's super simple: short sentences plus simple words plus clear facts. Take a look at this classic example. The class will start at 9 a.m. Please be on time. It gives a crystal clear fact, followed by a direct request. There is zero room for misinterpretation there, which is exactly what you want.
Moving on to pillar number 2, the instruction. This is your directional guide. Its core purpose is to tell someone exactly how to do something. Now, the equation changes a bit here. To build an instruction, we combine sequence words with imperative verbs. So instead of just dropping a fact like a notice does, you're actually giving a command, like telling a student to open their book.
And this brilliantly illustrates how those instructions work in practice. First, open your book. Next, read page 10. Finally, answer the questions. See those sequence words in there? First, next, finally. And those imperative verbs: open, read, answer. It moves step by step to create total clarity and just completely eliminate any student confusion. Our third pillar is the description. Think of this one as the lesson map. It's designed to explain a lesson and outline its scope before it even happens. The formula here relies heavily on looking forward. We combined future tense, or statements of intent, with a specific target skill. For instance, in this lesson, students will learn how to write a paragraph. That phrase "will learn" sets the intent, and writing the paragraph is the target skill. It beautifully frames the entire learning experience. And our final pillar is the reflection. If the description was the map for where we're going, the reflection is the rearview mirror. It's designed to look back and evaluate personal learning. The reflection equation is essentially a loop: I statements plus past tense plus an opinion or feeling. So today I learned how to write instructions. I think it was interesting, but a bit difficult. It connects that past experience directly to a personal evaluation. Let's move right along to section 2, the classroom communication matrix. So now that we understand our individual raw materials, we're transitioning to the framing stage. We need to see how all these pillars actually fit together in a cohesive structural grid. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how beautifully everything connects. Grammar usually gets a bad rap as just a set of random, disconnected rules. But looking at this matrix, we see that grammar is actually perfectly aligned with the core purpose of each text type. If your purpose is to give facts in a notice, your grammatical pattern structurally demands the simple present or future tense. If you need to give steps for an instruction, the structure demands imperative verbs and sequence words. The grammar serves the architecture, not the other way around. It's brilliant. Which brings us to section 3, the architecture of paragraphs. We're shifting our focus up to the macro level now. We've looked at the sentences and the grammar. Now, let's examine how we assemble these smaller elements into a fully framed, multi-sentence structure. I absolutely love this visual metaphor. A well-built paragraph is like a classical Greek temple. At the top, acting like the roof, is your topic sentence. It introduces the main idea and covers the whole structure. In the middle, acting as the strong pillars, are your supporting details. They bear the actual weight of the facts, the sequence steps, or the concrete examples. And at the bottom, your closing sentence wraps up the thought and provides a solid foundation of finality. Actually, if you miss even one of these three parts, the whole structure collapses. Let's walk through this concrete example together to see how a structurally sound three-part reflective paragraph is actually built. The topic sets the stage. Today, I learned about classroom instructions. Then, the support brings in those sequence words to bear the weight of the experience. First, I read examples. Then, I practiced writing my own. Finally, the closing sentence provides that evaluative foundation. It was useful for my future teaching. It's incredibly satisfying to see the architecture work so flawlessly in real life. All right, let's take a brief interactive moment. I've got a quick challenge for you. Try to mentally categorize these snippets based on what we've just learned. Ready? If I say, the exam will be on Monday, please bring a pencil. What is that? Right, that's a notice, facts, and a simple request. What about open your book, read page 10? Exactly, those are imperative verbs, making it an instruction. And if someone writes, today I learned new vocabulary, I feel happy. Yep, those I statements and past tense markers mean it is absolutely a reflection. Nailed it. And finally, Section 4, the Practitioner's Blueprint. We are officially moving from the theory of architectural design to the finishing touches you can immediately apply in your own classroom tomorrow. So the absolutely crucial point here is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you speak or write to your students. These phrase banks, they act as incredible cheat codes to guarantee clarity. Need to give information? Just start with the class will start at or students should bring. Need to map out a description? Use in this lesson, students will. By keeping these phrase banks handy, you're basically ensuring your structural integrity every single time. And here is the blueprint in action. These templates act as a completely foolproof guide for educators drafting daily classroom communications. Whether it's drafting a start time and a requirement for a notice, or writing 3 steps using sequence words for simple instructions, having these model drafts just takes the guesswork out of your day. It standardizes your communication so your students spend less time figuring out what you're saying and way more time actually learning the material. As we wrap up this explainer, let's do a quick self-evaluation audit. Ask yourself, can you now decode classroom notices based on their short sentences and simple facts? Can you follow and write clear instructional steps using sequence words and imperative verbs? Can you confidently differentiate between the 4 pillars of text? And finally, can you build a structurally sound 3-part paragraph like a Greek temple? If you're nodding along and checking those boxes, you have successfully gathered all the tools you need. I want to leave you with this really powerful thought. Great communication is by design, not by chance. Clarity in the classroom doesn't just happen randomly. It is a highly intentional architectural choice. And now you have the exact blueprint to make that choice every single day. So I'll leave you with this question. If your current classroom communication was a building, would it pass a structural inspection? Or is it time for a renovation? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.